Yeah, the question of what our goals are here in wanting to create sustainable communities, sustainable neighborhoods, particularly in urban regions. What is our goal, and what is our relationship to mainstream communities and to the system as a whole, and to bureaucratic systems and governments, is a huge question. And my feelings about that have changed considerably over the years. When we first started Rhizome, I personally was I had a very high level of paranoia at the time. I was feeling persecuted politically. I had just been involved in the Republican convention in 2000 and been thrown in jail for a number of days and charged with multiple felonious counts, and was incredibly fearful and mistrustful of governments. And when we started Rhizome, the city of Austin at that time did come down pretty hard on us initially and made us jump through a whole bunch of hoops. That just sort of fed into those feelings and that paranoia. And I saw ourselves initially as being very separate from the city or from governments, and just in this very reactionary mode. But my feeling was, at the time, our strategy should be to build up a broad enough base of community support, to go out and work in the community and let them see that the work we're doing is good and important, and that it's not so scary, and that it's not, that we can have these radical elements be present. We can have that, and we can have the social agenda, but we can also be working on issues of food and issues of water, things that cut across all kinds of social strata and political ideology. I mean, everybody eats, you know? I think that's why food is such a great issue to be working around. And if we built up a big enough base of community support, it would eventually get to the point where it looked better for the city or whomever to be on our side than to be opposed to us. That strategy, I believe, worked, particularly after we got the grant, the EPA grant. I remember having this meeting with the city and sitting down with them, and they're like, what can we do to help? And it blew my mind, because here was these city's officials that just a couple of years ago were doing whatever they could to shut us down. Now, in retrospect of all that has happened most recently, did that flip again the other direction? Maybe. It's difficult to say. But, I mean, I suppose, personally, I feel like I came to a point where I felt the limitations of the radical subculture, as far as, this information has gotten out there, that most people in the radical subculture are more or less aware of these concepts of sustainability and for the importance of them. And then I felt like it was time for me to take it to another level. That if I really wanted to get this out on a broader level, if there was really hope of getting this out on a broad scale and of making this transition, it has to get to a place where it's going to be a bit more accessible to more mainstream people, or just people who are not part of the radical subculture and who may be alienated by certain aspects of it, whether that's just, you know, our appearance or choice of dress, the way we smell, whatever it is. And those are not aspects that I feel by changing we would necessarily be compromising our core beliefs and ideals. That's sort of the point that I am at right now. I want to reach out to other people, to people who are outside of the radical subculture. Now, again, the question, though, of whether these ideas, these concepts of and our book is called A Do-It-Ourselves Guide to Sustainable City Living. We really emphasize that aspects of it because, yeah, I mean, as it is now, green, you hear it everywhere you go, green this, green this. It's a marketing term. What does it mean? I have no idea in most cases. It's just a way to sell products. And it's pervasive in this culture that most people associate being green with what you buy or having, you know, this cute collection of, you know, you can show off your hybrid car, you can show off your solar panels, you can show off your green toothbrush. You know, that it's kind of just a different way to sell a whole different set of products. You know, we're not going to be able to get out of the mess that we are in right now by changing our consumption habits. Yes, it's part of it, but the biggest part of it, I believe, is going to have to come from the grassroots. We can't wait for governments and corporations to decide that it's time to start doing the right thing. We need to take it upon ourselves to make these changes on a community-based level and begin building sustainable ecological infrastructure in our communities today. If we wait for top-down changes to occur, it's going to be too late. Not to say that I don't think top-down changes are necessary, important. I think they are. And I think a whole diversity of tactics are going to be necessary to bring about the changes that need to happen. And because the top-down changes are going to come as a consequence of pressure from on the grassroots level of people demanding for this to happen. Yes, I think it's, however, a real danger for all of these systems, all the do-it-ourself systems, to be standardized, to be co-opted, to be turned into products, for laws to be made which will permit them, but only if they are X and X permitted system, or UL listed, or approved by whatever bureaucracy, and said that engineered systems that are going to be expensive to implement, that the common person is not going to be able to implement in their own life, and again are going to become just something that's in the realm of the middle class, a novelty for the middle class. That's a genuine, that's a genuine concern, and I think, you know, it's a battle that has to be fought on a lot of fronts. I mean, a huge part of this of making it so these systems can be implemented on a broad scale is to remove the legal barriers which impede that at this point, that prevent it, of the process of recoding, of changing city ordinances and laws that prevent the more experimental sustainable systems from being implemented. That's a very important thing that needs to happen, because most people have enough to worry about with just putting food on the table for their children than trying to build a compost toilet in their backyard and have to be worried about the health department coming down on them for having it. It took us 4 years in Austin, but we actually did manage to get a code-approved, user-built composting toilet. It took me 4 years of fighting city and state bureaucracy to get them to okay it. And fortunately having a good friend who's an environmental engineer who's willing to sign off on all of their designs. But our idea was, let's come up with a design, let's get it approved, and that will at least pave the way. It will create a precedent for other people who want to follow in this path. Composting toilets are one of the things that, you know, I think they're so important for recycling our own human wastes, but also one of the things that I usually advise people to be one of the last things that they do in terms of working for self-reliance, just because the legal consequences are so severe. If you're found having an illegal composting toilet, you can get in a lot of trouble. And because it's such a cultural touchy thing with all the taboos around it as well. But again, really important, and I think if we are going to make this transition, if it's going to be successful, we're going to have to somehow come up with some way of having systems that are both sustainable and affordable and are easy enough to be approved. And there's likely going to be a permitting process for that that people are going to have to go through, but it has to be a system that's fairly easy to navigate as well. I'm sort of at the point right now where, you know, previously I'd felt, you know, permits are very difficult to acquire and expensive, and require getting engineers and architects to approve plans. But in retrospect of what's happened at Rhizome, I realized though that it's unfortunately going to be necessary if you're going to have a space that's going to last for any serious amount of time. Because you can do like we did and go without permits, but sooner or later it's going to come around and bite you in the tail. And that's ultimately what brought the space down in a lot of ways. So yeah, there's a balance there.